This is Thank You Mama weekly lessons from mothers all around the world. Exactly a week after my mom passed away and I was still reeling and life felt like an open wound, we ordered Chinese delivery and had dinner. And after dinner, we opened our fortune cookies and I found a cookie that changed my grief and maybe generally look out on life. I have it in front of me. It's framed. It said, "Don't cry because it's over. Smile because it happened." It was so shocking to receive this message from that fortune cookie in that moment. I somehow looked at the clock, and it was interesting that the time was exactly the time when my mom passed away a week earlier. And it was incredible. This fortune cookie changed my grief and tremendously helped me cope with it by turning the whole grief paradigm from loss into gratitude. And from then on, whenever I missed my mom, I turned the pain of her not being here into feelings of honor and gratitude and happiness that I had her as my mom and that I had her in my life. And this just changed things tremendously for me. And it's interesting because my mom always talked about how real things happen on some other level, in some other dimension, and that what we are actually seeing is just more or less a puppet show. And it took me many, many years of work and work on my spiritual growth and my inner life to start understanding this. And once I did, I started seeing signs of this other dimension just everywhere. And this fortune cookie was one of these signs for me. And these signs are amazing because they are great guides and they're great reminders that we do have to do our best. But at one point, we have to let go and trust because we are always gently held by this other dimension, universe, or as my guest today, Alejandra Proano says, by the invisible. Enjoy the episode. Hello and welcome to Thank You Mama. My name is Anna Teider. My guest today is Alejandra Wild. Alejandra is a psychodynamic psychotherapist with master's degrees in analytical psychology and Jungian and post-Jungian studies. She specialized in the treatment of developmental trauma and post-traumatic and dissociative disorders. She's also a co-founder and president of Kid Power Ecuador, which teaches children personal safety. Alejandra has worked in the US, Ethiopia, Jordan, England, Solomon Islands, Italy, and Austria in very and highly complex multicultural environments with individuals suffering from various forms of interpersonal violence and with expatriates with high levels of psychological stress. Hi, Alejandra, and welcome.
Hi, Anna. Thank you for having me in your podcast.
I am so excited to have you here. And I'm always love having very dear people that I know personally as my guests. It doesn't happen often enough. Alejandra, I know from the house where I live in Vienna. Your family owns the apartment beneath mine. And we all became great friends, and we just hung out at a 70th birthday party this last summer. And had so much fun talking to each other, didn't we?
Yeah, and a lot of time went by before we could connect again. So I'm really happy to talk with you again. It's been a few years, a couple of years at least.
Yes, yes, yes. But I'm so excited because when I got to know you better and learned about you and your mom, I was so excited to invite you and so excited when you said yes.
Thanks to you. Thank you. I am really excited too.
Alejandra, let's start with simple things. What is a psychodynamic psychotherapy?
In simple terms, and very short summary, psychodynamic psychotherapy comes from depth psychology. So it originates in Jungian psychology, post Jungian psychology, Freudian psychology, and it is the study of the psyche, which includes conscious and unconscious mind. So psychodynamic psychotherapy includes all those processes that go on in the unconscious, all those things that we cannot bring to our analytical mind, those things that are memorized implicitly in our bodies. And so psychodynamic psychotherapy is an approach to the psyche, an approach to psychology.
Yeah, yeah. But Alejandra, will you tell me a little bit about this amazing international experience? How did that happen, and what does that really mean? Whom did you work with, and how did that happen for you?
Without going too much to the past, I studied in the U.S. I'm from Ecuador, but I moved to the U.S. when I was very young. And then I studied in the US, and then I went to England to study. And after my studies, I went to Washington, D.C., and then I met my husband there, who Lawrence. And when we met, we decided to leave the US. And for the next decade and 13 years, I think now, we took various different jobs in different places in the world. And in all these places, I worked in the field of psychosocial support and mental health. So sometimes we ended up in a country or a city because of his job. Sometimes it was because of my job. And somehow both of us together made it work, and we both found so much meaningful experiences in these places. And a big part of my work, and something that I carry within me so deeply, is the work I did in the Middle East with those families that were escaping the war in Syria. This is something that marked a before and after for me. And that lasted a few years. And after that, we moved again and again and again. And after all those travels, I arrived back home, and back home is Ecuador, where I am now. I haven't lived here in my hometown as an adult ever. It's the first time.
Oh, that's amazing. And you had your baby in Ecuador?
Yes. We moved to Ecuador to have Rio Amadeo. That was the main reason. If I hadn't been pregnant, I don't think I would be here.
Okay. How does it feel to be back home?
It feels good. It always felt like it was something that had to happen. Felt like it was the place where my son wanted to be born. And when during my childhood, I lived here in Ecuador up until I was 12 when I left. And we lived through a lot of really difficult things. And I left without resolving those things because I left as a 12-year-old. So coming back has been in many ways encountering myself as a child, but now in the body and mind and heart of an adult. And I've been surprised by many things. I've been surprised by myself and how I feel here. I have encountered a lot of old patterns, old hurts, old fears. I mean, it's been a combination of things, but it's as if everything has been held in the beauty of becoming a mother.
Yes. So, you met your child while becoming a mother. I mean, it had to happen at the same time that you met
Yeah.
your 12-year-old self to resolve certain things, getting ready to become a mom. So that's really fantastic. Do you feel you resolved it, or is there so much to work with?
I feel like I really have taken this last 2 years to go very deep into my feeling and into my experiences. And so this last 2 years have been very intense.
Yeah.
But I really delved deep into things. And I know that I'm also here to do that. So that's what I'm doing now. And I don't know if I have to resolve something, but I have to live it again as an adult. So that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And seeing how I feel in this place that is an old place, but it's a new place also. So I would say that I'm adjusted. I would say that I feel at home. And I also can say that I don't think I will live in Ecuador all my life, because I also have a global soul and I really love the world.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's beautiful what a tectonic shift becoming a mother is for all of us. It's so much changes, and I can only compare it to losing a mom. Becoming a mom and losing a mom are such big shifts in our lives as women. Everything changes, and we see ourselves in completely different ways that we never knew existed before. So it's fascinating you're doing this work.
Yes, and I know you lost your mama, so you can clearly make that comparison. I don't know what it's like to lose a mother, but now I know what it's like to become one, and it's, I mean, that's a conversation for another time.
Yes, for another time.
Yeah.
Let's talk about mamas. Let's talk about Mama Desiree. Will you tell me about her a little bit?
Sure. So my mother has a French name. There's no reason behind it because she's very Ecuadorian. She was born in 1960 to Ecuadorian parents. Her mother was 17 years old. So my maternal grandmother was 17 years old when she had my mom.
So she was a very young grandmother as well.
Yes. And my mother had me when she was 19. So my mother is very young. And I am 38. My mother is 19 years older than me. So when my mother was young, she was a very bohemian young woman. Her friends were writers and poets and protesters, and she was born in the 60s, so she was a young woman in the 70s.
It sounds like she lived in a city.
She lived in a city.
Yes.
She lived in the city of Quito, in the capital. And so sometimes I have this image of her with a whiskey in hand and like a cigarette. And then I think I probably saw her like this a few times when I was very young. I don't see her like this anymore. Now she's a woman she's a transformer. So now she enjoys life in a different way, not with cigarette and whiskey in hand, but I have this image of her as a young woman. So she graduated from school and she applied to a scholarship abroad. And as she was applying, she saw in the newspaper that there was a company in Ecuador, a new company, a tourism company that was looking for tour guides for the Amazon. So this was in the late 70s. And at this time, the Amazon was still a very, very wild place. There was no infrastructure. Tourism was just starting. And my mother got obsessed. With it, and she applied and she got rejected. And she got rejected because she was a woman, first of all. And the jungle was a wild place for men. And also because she didn't have any knowledge of biology. Okay. So she started to study biology, and she took all the exams and she applied again, and she got into this guiding course with 6 other really tall, strong men. And my mother is 5 feet tall.
You are tiny, so I can imagine she's
I'm tiny
as well. Yeah.
I think you're small too.
Yeah, I'm also tiny.
And okay, so she was as tiny as we are, or maybe tinier. And she went into the Amazon, and she learned in the Amazon to use a machete and to grab caimans by the neck.
God,
There's
incredible.
photos of her with big serpents around her. And anyway, she got the job. And as she tells the story, when she arrived in the Amazon in these tiny planes, she arrived first, and then she saw that from this tiny plane came down this really handsome, tall man with curly black hair. This was who later became my father. And when she saw him, she said, "I'm going to marry him." And later she found out that he was her boss. And they spent some time in the Amazon. And she became a jungle woman under his authority.
This is amazing.
Yeah, it's cool because there's some photos of it, so it's really fun to see my mother
really cool.
in that part of her life. And then there was a turn of fate. Well, she got married, then she had me. She had my brother. My brother is 5 years younger than me. And then when she was 25 years old, my father fell in love with another woman. And he left home. And shortly after that, or not shortly after that, almost a year after that, he came back home. And a few months later, he died in a paragliding accident.
No.
Yes, that is the big story of my mother's life, and it became the big story of my life too.
Yeah, of course. So you were little. You were.
I was 9. I was about 9. My mom was 26 when my father passed away, and my mom went into a big, long depression, and we were taken care of by my grandmother. After that, my mother eventually remarried, and after a few years, we all went to the U.S. After a couple of years, I was almost 13. We went to the U.S. And we continued to do school there. And eventually, my mom got divorced. And when she got divorced, she had to reinvent herself completely in the U.S. She was a Latin immigrant who had never worked in the U.S. So she started to work as a masseuse therapist. And she found out as a masseuse therapist that massage therapist that she had this wonderful gift of talking to people, and they would come and get massages with her and ask her for her recommendations and advice. And so after some time, she opened up her private practice without any studies in our living room in the US. And she started to take all the courses and all the licensing and everything to become a psychologist.
This is incredible.
But she never.
So at this stage, she's in her 40s? When she
No. It happened very quickly. So we went to the US. She was probably 29 or so. So in her mid-30s, she found that she had this gift in her.
Incredible.
And then eventually she started to study. She did all her studies online in the US as she could with 2 kids on her own. And she opened her practice. And at first, very underground, because she didn't have any papers. I mean, she didn't have any diplomas.
Diplomas and licenses, yeah. But she had clients because they knew her from the massage and they wanted to come.
And they told her, please just have me for half hour so we can talk to you. And I remember setting up all of our living room in such a funny way I just remember the time when we had to make this space for this new part of her emerging. And I was at school then. After some years, she got tired of being in the US and she went back to Ecuador. And since then, she eventually met her husband, her current husband, who she's now has had her many years of marriage, and he's wonderful. And she just she's settled down back at home, and her life here at home is so beautifully curated according to her soul's desires and wishes. She's someone that has made everything happen from zero.
Is she still working? She's still working as a therapist.
She still works as a therapist, and she gardens, and she spends tons of time with her grandson. It's really to do.
She must be so happy to be a grandma, is she?
Oh, I can't tell you. I can't tell you. I've never known my mother as she is now. She had to be very masculine for a long time because she had to take on this role of father for us. And now, being a grandma, all of her softness and nurturance and all this beautiful bit that I think I missed from her has come out, and I'm getting to experience it through also my son.
That's beautiful. You have a new mom. You're experiencing her blossoming in a new way.
I have a new mother. Yeah. I've had a few mothers in this one mother, because she's gone through a lot of periods of time. She's shed a lot of skins. So I've known many in one mother. It's been incredible.
This is something that my mom has been always trying to teach me, that especially for women, that we go through phases, and that it's very normal that we have very different phases in our lives, and we should accept this, and that we don't have to be everything and do everything at the same time. She would always tell me, patience, easy. Like, I was always very ambitious and nervous and wanted everything to happen at the same time. And she was trying to slow me down and tell me, look, there's a time in your life to educate yourself. There's a time to go crazy on your career. There's a time to have a child and calm down and nurture. There's a time to work again. She was, and that to me connects with what you're saying, that you had many moms in this one mom. I did as well. And I think this is beautiful. And this is something we as women really have to recognize and appreciate, that we don't have to be everything and have everything at the same time, that it's beautiful and normal to have different us and different phases. And
yes, I connect with that. I've thought about that often for me too, becoming a mom. These last 2 years, I've also wanted to be other things. And I keep reminding myself, I'm never getting this first 2 years back. I'm going to do that now. And what you're saying, Anna, also applies to how we see our moms.
Yes.
Because, okay, maybe we had a really fun mom at some point. Okay, maybe we had a friend mom at some point. That must end at some point. That may end, or that may start later on.
Or change in its form.
Friendship. And maybe someone's mom had to be like my mom, very out there in the world, working, doing what needed to be done. And that doesn't mean that a different mom can emerge within that one mother later. And so also giving that opportunity to our mothers to live their own periods of time, even when we are adults. They also deserve that just as much as we do, even up until they're 100 years old. Why not? They are also changing women, changing beings.
I feel we tapped into something very, very important right now.
Yeah.
I never really thought about this so concretely, how important it is for women to allow ourselves, and as you say, allow our moms and maybe our daughters, if we had some, for those who had daughters, to be different people at different times and to go through different phases. And that's okay.
Yes. And if we expand it even more, I think ultimately this applies to everyone.
It does.
Doesn't it?
It does. My mom always told me it's specifically very strong with women, because we do go through these big changes when we become moms. I think men don't necessarily. Like, we go through these certain changes in our lives. It's also biological. We go through, we get our periods and we become fertile, and we go through being moms, and then we go through our menopauses one day. We really have these phases in our lives that are a little more distinct than men's, I think.
Yes, they're connected to our biology that's different from men's.
Yeah. But hey, we already learned the first lesson from Mama Desiree.
Yeah, we
Yeah, it's
did.
interesting. We tapped into a first lesson already.
We did.
What have you learned? What do you feel are most important things?
Well, this one thing is one of the most precious things for me because it has what I'm about to share with you and the listeners, because it has saved my life and because it has made my life beautiful. And my mom taught me from a very young age to be able to see the invisible, to be able to enter the the world down under, the unconscious, all that space within a person and in the world that we can't see, but there's magic in there. There are answers in there. There are also my father is in there.
Mm.
Creativity is in that place. And how did she do this? She did this by, I think one of the very concrete ways was by reading poetry to me as a young girl.
Mm-hmm.
She had so much literature around, and she would read poetry, and we would sit with her older friends. That's in that environment is probably where I saw her with cigarette and whiskey. I don't know, but we would sit, and I would hear so much poetry.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew in this world where symbols made sense to me and where we could talk about dreams. What did you dream last night? I dreamt this and that. And so this showed me that those doors exist and I can go through those doors. And the world becomes so much bigger than what we think it is. And why that has saved my life? Because that is the place where I go for meaning, for significance, for creativity, for connection, for hope, for memory. And that's also very much has informed and nurtured my work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I found also my work by doing that. So it's been incredible that I've received that inheritance. She received it from her father. Her father loved literature, and then also from her maternal stepfather. He was a poet, so she received this from her maternal stepfather as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's something that my life is saturated by this world, and I love it.
I connect to this because my mom was always trying to teach me. She would say things happen on a different level. That was maybe her way of doing this. She was always telling me what we see is just a surface. There's always a different dimension behind it all. So I think this is exactly what you're talking about, and I am so grateful for that because, as you said, it just opens a whole other universe and way of living and experiencing everything. But tell me, let's jump to next lesson.
Okay, so the next lesson that I'm lucky to be receiving it now and integrating it now on a daily basis. It's that it is up to me and to you and to every person to protect those things that are precious to us in relationship. And how do we do that? We really let go. We can let go of all those petty things that seem to weigh on us about the other. I'm talking mostly about relationships, especially romantic relationships.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many, Anna, there's so many things. And you know this because you've lived in this world enough time to know. And there's so many things about the other person that are just not important. And it is possible, and it is up to one to protect peace and love and kindness and togetherness and understanding and whatever is precious to that one person. And we can oversee so much. And it's worthwhile overseeing a lot of those small things. And how am I learning this? because I see my mother with her husband do this all the time. My mother's husband could drive her up the wall. I mean, he's
Yeah.
a wonderful man. He's got his quirks, and I see how she just doesn't get hooked, and things that could be important or that were important to her or me, because I see her now, are not anymore. And it's such a simple thing. It's a thing that we hear all the time, but it's magic.
Yeah.
It makes a relationship better. It makes life better.
I wonder two things. I wonder if she only learned it with her third husband, because I can imagine when we're young, we're not able to do that.
Yes.
We're young, we're so petty, we're like, this is disturbing me, and we get this knowledge and wisdom with age, I think.
Aha.
I see this with myself now that I've turned 50. And I just texted my friend the other day and I said, I just love this. I love it. I'm so much more relaxed and much more accepting. I really think this comes with age, and maybe with a third, for some people, with the third relationship, But here's a question that immediately opened up when I was listening. Do you think it could apply for our relationships with ourselves?
Oh, yeah.
I know it's a tricky question.
Of course it could. And we would live in heaven.
Exactly.
Our bodies would be a real temple.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So much doesn't matter. All our quirks, it's just passing. It's passing
and
through
little
us.
Mistakes. We also, especially when we're young, we're like, I did this wrong, and I did this wrong, and I shouldn't have done this, and and I wish we could be like, it's okay.
Yeah. And if we can bring some humor to it, that's like even the next step, like, there it is again, this thing or this other thing, or here's a new thing that makes me a bit uncomfortable about myself, but those things can even become a bit humorous. And I think that would be wonderful to apply that. And yes, I think that's something that comes with age, because often I tell my mom, wow, I can't let I want to follow the steps. I want to be able to let go of all these things.
Yeah.
And she says to me, don't wait until you're my age. You can do it. You can do it
great.
now.
Okay.
Don't
That's
wait
great.
until you're my age.
Yeah.
It's taken me a long time to learn this. And I'm like, okay. So I practice.
Okay.
Yeah.
We only have 3 minutes left. And I'd love to ask you my last question, and very important one, which is, what do you wish she had taught you? Was there anything important she hasn't taught you?
It's a difficult question, because I have a hope and a feeling that there's still time for that one thing that she hasn't taught me, that I can still receive it from her. And Anna, how lessons come kind of at the right time.
They do.
Or we receive them when we can. And if it's too early, they don't become lessons. So I'm wondering if there was something that I wish she would have taught me that she hasn't yet, but maybe she will. I
That's
hope
a great answer. I love it. I know she will.
Thank you. I hope so.
Do you just quickly want to mention the last lesson you wanted to share?
Sure. The last lesson is very personal to her. She wants, but it had echo in me. She told me that when my father broke their agreement of loyalty and faithfulness, her heart broke completely. And if she had been wiser at 25 or 26, she says now, she would have allowed some space and she would have tried to connect with a more tender part of her, and she would have had a conversation with my father, and she would have looked for dialogue. And she says this, and the lesson from this is that nothing is so black and white as we think it is. Nothing. Life is
Thank
really.
You for that one.
Yeah, in nuances and in shades of expressions, and so yeah, she wonders now what would have happened if she had opened up some dialogue. So yeah, it has echo in my life, in other areas.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Ale. This was so
Yeah.
beautiful.
For me too. Thank you,
Yeah.
Anne.
If you enjoy Thank You Mama and want to help it grow, please take the 2 seconds to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps. If you'd like to get in touch, you can send me a mail at info@thankyouMama.net. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter under Anna Tider, that's Tajder. This was Thank You Mama. Come back next week, subscribe, and tell your friends.